Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Never Mind the Buy Box. We've already got some YouTubers in the house this evening already, nice and keen. That's good. Waiting for the episode to start, which is really, really good. Just before we get started, can I just double check? Bit of housekeeping. Can everyone see and hear us tonight? It's not an optical illusion. There are three of us. There are not two of us this evening. So if you could just let us know in the comments while I log in. We've already got Andy, Ruth, and Jamie that have joined us via YouTube. Just wait out for the notifications to go live. So let me introduce my guests to you this evening. We are very lucky to be joined by Piers, Eveleigh. Have I pronounced that right, Piers? Eveleigh? Yeah.
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, you're right there.
I've got it. And Tom Meek from a company called Avask, who are going to be spending just under the next hour talking to us about requirements of selling in Europe and, what is kind of going on with the European selling options at the moment. I know it's something that our community is desperately missing. So thank you for taking the time to join us this evening. We're just going to wait for a few more people to jump on live because it's there we go. I've got the comments up. On this software, it only shows me certain types of comments. It doesn't appear to be working on StreamYard at the moment, so we've only got YouTube viewers. So I'm just going to double check. I don't know why it's not gone live on StreamYard for some reason. So on Facebook, which means it's just giving me a tick. So maybe it's just got, here we go. So yeah, we've had a little bit of a 2-minute delay. Sorry, guys. It's just literally coming through. So we're joined by Chippo, Chris, Darren. I'll just wait for the notifications to get pushed out. Obviously, because we've got a bit of a delay with the live stream tonight, those of you watching, if you can give us some likes and hearts and loves just to push that notification out, that'll be fine. Oh, Matt says Facebook fine, watching on Facebook, David. So we'll just wait for a few more people to jump on. So it just must be a little bit glitchy RM. So thank you for taking the time to talk to us this evening about Europe and selling, what's going on there. But just before we get started, for those that are watching, if you guys wouldn't mind introducing yourself and introducing the company that you're from, just so we can get an idea of what you do in your daily lives.
Yeah, of course. Piers, off to you.
Thanks very much, Tom. So yes, my name is Piers Eveleigh. I work as one of the International Business Development Officers at Avask Accounting. So my primary responsibility is helping organisations, entrepreneurs to really expand their businesses into multiple marketplaces on a global scale. So a lot of that is tax requirements in terms of VAT. And I also specialise in customs and trade, which has been a very hot topic of late with all of the implications of Brexit. So I'm sure I'll be covering that a bit more during tonight's session. But yeah, just to give you a quick overview.
Okay.
Thank you, and thanks very much for having us, Natalie. It's great to be on here. In terms of a quick intro to myself, so I work alongside Piers in the business development team. So again, similar position really is helping entrepreneurs expand their business, mostly Amazon sellers. They're either doing private label or retail arbitrage, whatever it might be, looking to expand into the various marketplaces. I'd say our core focus as a company is the UK and EU, which is why we're really looking forward to tonight's session, but also assist across sort of the USA, UAE, Australia, and most of the Amazon marketplaces really. In terms of the actual company, we've been working with Amazon and Amazon sellers for the past 8 years. So we understand the pain, or some of the pain that you go through as sellers, account suspensions, tax requirements, all those things that you don't particularly want to focus on is where we specialise as a firm. So we really want to lift the administrative burden as much as possible for you, and also provide advice on how to get from A to B, which includes giving you a whole host of resources as a client of ours, but also connecting you with our partner network to try and look at everything that's a blocker, everything that we can help with, from shipping, payments, as Piers says, customs, tax, and really help you expand into those markets. So really pleasure to be on here, and thanks for having us.
Oh, you're welcome. Well, thank you for the introduction. Now, obviously, we were just talking briefly beforehand, and yeah, you guys must have been pretty busy lately with everything that's been going on, especially, you know, with the type of marketplaces that you work in, especially Amazon. Obviously, there was a lot of confusion. I also think it's fair to say from Amazon's side, we were talking briefly beforehand about it was very much, you know, a last minute deal. So that didn't particularly help with the guidelines moving forward, what was going to be acceptable, what wasn't going to be acceptable. So I think a good place to start is if we could just start off with what are the current requirements, because I think a lot of people that are watching tonight and a lot of people will see this video in the future are going to be people who still don't understand kind of not what's happened, obviously, but where we've gone from. Majority of our audience, I think it's fair to say, we have a mix of pan-European sellers and also people who are using European fulfillment network. But probably more so on the European fulfillment network. So obviously the big group of our audience would have been, you know, would have lost that opportunity and now don't know really where to go with their particular options. So if you could give us a brief overview of what's going on now, I think that would be really handy.
Yeah, I'm happy to take that on, really. I've been involved in Brexit, obviously, since joining the company, really. And as we were discussing before, it's been an ongoing topic for the last 4 years now. So I think everyone's sort of sick and tired of hearing the word Brexit. But rather than getting caught up in the political jargon of the B word, I think the hard facts are, as you mentioned, it's affecting a lot of businesses. So the British Chamber of Commerce stated at the end of January that 49% of exports from the UK into the European Union had faced some kind of issue. And that fact was quite a hard-hitting one for me. So you've got just 1 in 2 chance of facing some sort of disruption when you're shipping your goods. So really what our job is at Avask is to offer concise information that's going to help your business. I'd say moving forward, if you haven't yet sort of implemented the necessary changes, then it's really important to do so. And the 2 main things I would say that you now need in order to continue trading in Europe is, first of all, at least 1 VAT number in the European Union. So if you're pan-European Amazon seller, then obviously you've got your 6 main marketplaces VAT numbers. That's great. Previously, you might have just had a UK EORI number, which is for customs purposes. And whilst the UK was part of the European Union and customs union, that number would have satisfied for all EU countries. Now that the UK has formally left the European Union and customs union, unfortunately, that Iori number will only be possible in the UK. So what you'll need to do is actually get a second EORI number in a European country of your choice. I'd say that France is probably going to be the best possible chance of getting this quickly. And we can actually do that directly at Avask. It normally takes about 24 to 48 hours to activate. And it is a vital requirement if you're going to be shipping your goods into Europe.
No, absolutely. Because I think the thing is, there is a little bit of a myth that you have to be, because we, again, will have a variety of different sellers that are already UK VAT registered and non-UK VAT registered. And I think there's lots of red tape in terms of not misinformation, but there's not a lot of clear guidance and information online. You know, when most people start looking, you say, okay, well, Iori's often linked with VAT numbers and things like that. But I'm right in saying that you can obtain a UK Iori number even if you are not a UK VAT registered business. Is that correct?
So you need to, sorry, was the question, can you actually apply for an Iori number if you don't have the VAT number in the country?
In the UK? Because I think a lot of our viewers are probably aware that they will need to VAT register in the European countries, but they might not yet be VAT registered in the UK if they want to continue with that. So as far as I'm aware, you can just apply for an Iori number, providing you have a UK company.
So in terms of Iori requirements, you're going to need to have a VAT number in the EU to actually apply for an EU Iori number.
Yeah.
To get that, obviously, to get the VAT number in a lot of these countries, you do actually also require a VAT number in the country of incorporation as well. So yeah, it's a bit of a shake-up in the fact that, you know, if you're under the 85,000 threshold, you know, a lot of sellers haven't even needed to VAT register, but now there is a requirement to do so, because otherwise you're not going to be able to register for the EU VAT number, get the EU Iori number to allow you to obviously continue selling. And I think, you know, as we discussed previously, I think a lot of the people that are going to be watching this tonight are going to be UK-based businesses, of which, you know, it's really nice and easy. And I don't think everyone really appreciated the situation we were in till now, which is, you know, that free trade agreement and being able to trade under what's known as the distance selling threshold from the UK into France, into Germany. Everything was great. And with Brexit, it's really added a huge administrative burden on you as a seller. So yeah, as Piers said, really just to break that down one step further, it's, you know, very, very simple. And the recommendation is that you split your inventory. So whether you're sourcing from China, India, wherever it might be, you're going to have stock in the UK, and you're also going to have stock in an EU country. And as Piers mentioned, you know, France is looking at a great option, and we'll probably come on to, you know, why that is a bit later on. Yeah,
absolutely. So obviously there was this big kind of thing, and I've got to be honest, I mean, I've been in business for a long time, you know, 15 plus years. Tom, I think we were talking about this the last time that we spoke. I have a little bit of experience in import, so kind of Iori numbers, VAT registrations, import duty, all of these different type of jargon that a lot of Amazon sellers, because they've been really spoiled for a really long time. I mean, we have, in terms of, because Amazon just pretty much take care of everything from that point of view. Obviously, this has come as a little bit of a shock to a lot of sellers, you know, having to deal with different requirements and things like that, and hearing the words duties and like Iori numbers and registrations and all this type of thing. And I understand why people are really hesitant to look into it further, even though they're also aware. So there's a lot of FOMO going on at the moment, because the opportunity in Europe is absolutely huge and everyone's completely aware of that. But the trouble is, no one can seem to get past this situation, because it's a whole new world for a lot of businesses, and even businesses that have maybe been established for like 10 years and selling on Amazon, because they've never had to deal with this before.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a massive change that sellers have had to go through. Yeah, depending on the situation, and it really does make a difference on where you're manufacturing, as to, you know, what these new rules that have come into place, actually how they affect you as a business. If you're manufacturing in the UK, well, actually, it's much better than, in some cases, than manufacturing outside of, in China and India and stuff. So there's a number of advantages, and people have really had to look at their supply chain and, you know, the different elements of the process that they go through, and really go back to the drawing board, especially looking at margins and things. You know, we see a lot of people on the flat rate scheme. And as an Amazon FBA seller, if you're based outside of the UK and in the US, for example, well, that's all changed. So it's really had a huge impact on people. But yeah, I mean, if you stick to the facts, as Piers said, you're going to be looking at getting that VAT number set up and the Iori number set up. So if you're looking at this and you're thinking, okay, I need to take some actionable steps, the first part to take is that you need 2 VAT numbers. You need 2 Iori numbers, and the Iori number is a number that allows you to clear your goods at customs. Yeah. So that's the nuts and bolts of everything to do with Brexit. I think, you know, Piers can guide us through more on the customs element as to what's required. And that's it. It'd be good to understand from your side as to sort of the general course that sellers are taking, because you mentioned some sellers are on EFN, some are on Pan-EU. Well, you know, it's fair to say that 90% plus sellers used to use the UK as a gateway into Europe.
Absolutely.
Whereas now, you know, we're looking at alternative solutions, because the Pan-EU program, the UK is no longer part of the EU. It's no longer part of the European fulfillment network, because it's not part of Europe.
And I think, yeah, sorry to interrupt. I think that what has flummoxed a lot of people, because, you know, even right up until Amazon did one of their first webinars on what was going to happen moving forward, and they were saying, okay, I heard the word customs border, and that had not even entered my head, because I naturally assumed that if you were going to be pan EU registered, that you wouldn't have to worry about that type of thing. So that came as a big shock to a lot of people, because I think that where everyone was saying, okay, well, if we get a deal, that's fine, because we're not going to have to worry about the customs border at the end of the day, because we get a deal. So there was that confusion there as well. But I think in my early videos, I was saying, look, deal or no deal, there's still going to be a customs border. This is here to stay, and this is what's going to happen. So I think it threw, certainly 6 months ago or 6 months before Brexit, I was saying, look, if you're pan-European, you're going to be okay. But as it turns out, no, that no longer exists. Essentially, for UK sellers as much anymore. So if we look at from the start, from the customs border, which is hopefully where Piers can kind of fill us in with what's going on, and then we'll talk a little bit further about EFN as it stands at the moment, because again, EFN's not dead; it's just dead for UK. I think I'm right in saying, because I kept saying, oh, it's gone. No, it's not gone. It's just gone for us, essentially. So we'll come on and we'll talk about that in a moment. But Piers, if you wouldn't mind, just kind of what is it? What do we need to get stuff over the customs border at the moment?
Yeah, thanks very much. And actually, I completely agree with what both of you just said, Natalie. Last year, I think a lot of clients that I was speaking to in particular had questions about whether there was going to be a hard Brexit or not. And I think the answer was always going to be yes, but the real question was how hard it was going to be. So we've always known that the declarations are going to be needed. And Tom, as you rightly mentioned, in a lot of our experiences, sellers use the UK as a really effective gateway into Europe, where traditionally they bring their goods into the UK and then use the various solutions in place, whether it's through Amazon or through their own solutions, to actually get the goods across the border. But it was so easy to do because the goods were already in free circulation. Mm-hmm. One of the main points to highlight in terms of the ramifications of Brexit is that there is a new customs border in place. So what you've got is a new concept for a lot of businesses that have never had to deal with things like duties and import VAT when sending their goods from the UK into the EU. And as you rightly mentioned, with any export or import that is being made from the UK into the EU or vice versa, you now have to have an export declaration and an import declaration to go with the consignment that you're going to be sending. So terms that people are now familiarizing themselves with and gaining an understanding of are things like commercial invoice. So that's the document that you're going to need to fill out with a detailed description of your goods. You're going to need to include your commodity codes on there, your country of origin information, your Incoterms, so things like that. And I'll be happy to focus on those terms in a bit more detail later on in the presentation. But in terms of the fundamentals, yes, it's going to be a commercial invoice, a customs declaration, and then also a means of reclaiming the import VAT when the goods have arrived at the customs border.
And who is responsible for reclaiming the customs VAT, essentially?
So it'll be your tax representative in the EU. So depending on who you're working with, who is completing and submitting your VAT filings in whichever country you've imported to, it would be them that can assist with the reclaim of any import VAT. So say, for example, you've got a UK-based business who is now sending a batch or a pallet of goods into a German FBA warehouse. Yeah, the shipment will be made. When the goods arrive at the German customs border, the import VAT will be charged. So import VAT is charged at the rate of entry, so 19%, and it's based on the cost value of the goods, the cost of the transportation, and the cost of any insurances that are associated with the transportation as well. You then times that by the 19% to get your import VAT. That import VAT typically is paid by the transport agent that you're working with. So a lot of clients that I've been speaking to have used people like DHL, FedEx, a couple of other names. But generally speaking, it's the transport agent that will pay the import VAT initially so that the goods can be cleared, and then will bill the seller directly for those. Now, what you'll need to do once you've paid your import VAT and the goods have been cleared is request what's called a customs entry advance from the transport agent. So this is the import documentation / declaration that will be issued by your transport agent if you can provide your tax representative with that information, then they'll be able to action the import VAT reclaim against any input VAT that is being made by the business in that filing period.
Right. And because essentially you have to be VAT registered in that country, it is a reversible transaction.
It is, yeah.
Okay, well, that's good. That's good to know, because certainly when we've imported from China in the past, it's all these additional fees and things like that you have to take into account. Because if you're sending a relatively large value shipment, that's an extra 20% cash flow that you have to think about with regards to your business. And it's going to take presumably until the following quarter to claim it back.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on where you're importing your goods. So in Germany, typically, I think most people would file on a monthly basis, in which case the cash flow isn't such an issue. But as you rightly mentioned, the filing period differs per marketplace. So in some cases, you might have to wait until the end of the quarter to get the reclaim, which is obviously, it can cause a few teething issues in terms of cash flow for the business.
Mm-hmm. And obviously, that's the import fees. Is there duty to be paid as well?
Tom, do you want to take this one?
Yeah, of course, yeah. So obviously, whenever you're importing into the UK or EU, there's going to be import VAT and import duty. Now, I don't know how familiar everyone will be with the changes, but just to give a quick overview as to what the thresholds are, because there's thresholds when you're trading from the UK into the EU. With the deal that's in place, there are certain thresholds to provide some sort of relief on those duties and import VAT. So what are those thresholds? Well, anything under 150 euros, if the consignment is below 150 euros, the intrinsic value is going to be no import duty payable on entry.
Right.
So if that shipment that you're selling, obviously the majority of times, if you're selling an FBA shipment, it's going to be much more than that. But if you're trading under 150 euros, then there'll be no import duty payable. And if the product value is under 22 euros, there will be no import VAT payable. Okay, so big benefit there. And obviously a lot of sellers are, again, looking at the way that they ship into the EU and bearing in mind those thresholds, it may actually be more cost effective to change selling from one country into the EU as opposed to shipping, large pallets, containers into the EU. So a lot of people are doing the calculations and really weighing up what works out better for them. And there's also some additional rules and regulation changes with regards to sort of the rules of origin as well. Where 0% tariffs will be offered for any goods going from the UK to the EU if the place of manufacture, the country of origin of those goods is the UK. Okay, so some really, really big changes there. I don't know, Piers, if you wanted to add anything off the back of that.
Yeah. Rules of origin, definitely important. I think it's really important to sort of reiterate what the preferential tariffs mean. So rules of origin is for goods that are manufactured in the UK or the EU, as Tom mentioned. So not from third countries such as China, for example, where I know a lot of Amazon sellers in particular do get their goods manufactured due to the cheaper costs associated with doing that. So if your goods are manufactured in Far East countries such as China, then you will not be eligible for zero tariffs and will be subject to duties. However, if your goods are manufactured in home regions such as the UK or EU, then you've got that preferential rate of duty of 0%, which is a massive benefit if you are sourcing your goods from local suppliers or manufacturers.
So presumably that will be something that the government had in mind in terms of the deal that it wanted to make with to improve, people purchasing from UK suppliers and things like that. So it could actually come to, because we're very much aware that shipping rates, because of everything that's going on with COVID and lots of different things within the world from the Far East and places like that, have gone up exponentially over the last kind of 6 months. So if you take that into account and the fact that you might not necessarily have to pay any import duty as well, then it could actually be coming to a point where many businesses, from our point of view, it's going to be more cost effective for them to purchase from UK suppliers.
Definitely. Yeah, I think we've certainly experienced a lot of sellers that have looked to do that, and I think a lot of sellers with COVID and and the whole situation starting off really in China and looking at what effect that's had on production and the manufacturing stage. I think a lot of sellers have had to look at where they source their products and look at the likes of India and so on as well. And I think a lot of people have looked at the UK and maybe a little bit more expensive, but with now everything that's gone on with the duties and the deal, that may be more attractive.
Absolutely. Presumably, the more we get into Brexit, the more trade deals we do with other countries and things like that, then that's potentially going to open up more supply chain opportunities for other countries as well. I suppose it depends on the list. We got to get over COVID first of all before they start, reaching out to other countries, I would have thought, and start doing lots of different trade deals. But one thing I wanted to ask, we've got a couple of questions actually I want to go through, and we'll dive into in a moment. So I'm not ignoring anyone, it's just fascinating. I just love talking about this kind of stuff. But actually a few people have said, I didn't mean to click that, sorry. A few people have said, it's funny because you mentioned that you guys getting an Iori number from France. We had a few people say they've been waiting over 6 weeks and they've been doing it through Germany. So obviously if you guys do want to, if anyone's watching tonight, reach out to Piers and Tom at Avask, and obviously it's something that they might be able to speed that process up to you, most definitely, because time is money when it comes to these type of things, and the opportunity of selling in Europe, people want to get into it as quickly as possible, get into that opportunity as quickly as possible. But one thing I wanted to ask, now we spoke about EFN, which is the European Fulfillment Network. I went around, like I said previously, saying it was dead, it doesn't exist anymore, but that's actually incorrect because it does still exist. It just doesn't exist for UK sellers essentially anymore. But there is an opportunity. I don't know, Tom or Piers, if you want to explain to us, there's a couple of different ways that people can actually still sell into Europe. It does, I believe, always involve a VAT registration. But there's certain types of countries that you can VAT register in, you can import those goods, and then you can utilize the European Fulfillment Network from a particular country. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you've got to basically look at the whole situation of where you were in the UK still exists in the EU. So nothing has really changed except for the UK has come out of that agreement and it's no longer part of that free trade. It's now a third country. So you imagine that if you were using the UK as your port of entry, picture that as Germany or France or Italy or Spain, whatever. It's fair to say that I would imagine that most people are using FBA. Is that the case?
Yeah, I would have thought so. We do have some heavy hitter merchant fulfilled sellers, but majority that are watching would probably be FBA. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. So, typically sellers are going to be directing shipments straight to an FBA center or using a 3PL. I mean, in terms of, what are your options when you look at actually importing and continuing to sell into Europe under the European Fulfillment Network? Well, it works exactly the same way as it did before, just minus the UK. So you send your shipment in to, let's say, Germany or France are the two main markets, Germany being the highest in terms of volume of sales, followed by France. Now, just to take a step back to that, a lot of people are actually taking France as a better option on the basis that although it's a slightly smaller market, well, it takes 8 to 10 weeks to get VAT registered there. Also, if you're already VAT registered there, which, as you said, some of the pan-European sellers that are joining us tonight may already be, in which case the Iori application is 24 to 48 hours. So depending on your situation, France is a very horrible country to stay in. And I think it's fair to say, Piers, from your experience, that France is a much quicker process to clear customs. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I'd definitely say so. I think with Germany as everyone's second favourite marketplace after the UK, I think that's where anyone who wasn't prepared and had to get that registered in a European country has gone for. And we already saw a backlog last year because of COVID, people working from home, the tax authorities not having the resources to be able to action the requests they were getting as quickly as they would have liked. So I'd say that France has definitely been a bit more of a smoother process at customs. And actually, just quickly on the point that you made, Natalie, sorry, about the Iori number in Germany that's being asked about. When you are requesting your Iori number in Germany, you should actually get an acknowledgement email from the German tax authorities, and they'll be letting you know that your application has at least been lodged. What the authorities are saying is that until you've received your number, that authorization email will be enough to clear customs with. So if you haven't yet received your Iori number by post, which, by the way, all German Iori numbers will be sent to your registered business address, then in the meantime, you will be able to use the acknowledgement email that you've received from the German tax authorities to clear customs with. And if you have got that email, there's also an email included in there that you can chase them up on using.
Perfect. No, that's really handy to know. And one thing, going back to the French side of things, presumably if we're sending a shipment from UK to France, technically that will be cheaper in carrier costs as well. I don't know, maybe.
It's difficult to really put sort of hit the nail on the head in terms of the transportation costs. I think they're fluctuating so much, and obviously there's been an inflation in cost because of the increased demand. I wouldn't really be in a position to give a guarantee yes on whether it's going to be cheaper or not. But what I'd say is definitely, if you haven't yet made a shipment, it's worth inquiring with a few different transport agents to get a rough estimate of costs. And then once you've compiled that information, you can pick and choose which one you feel would be best. And if it comes down to cost, then hopefully there'll be one that stands out as the cheapest.
Absolutely. I mean, we know places like Pallet Online and places like that offer those type of one-stop shop services, which by the way, we're going to talk about one-stop shop in a moment, but in a different term. Was a term that I just found out about just in the last week or so, essentially, which is some major changes that are going to be happening with all of this and selling in Europe moving forward. But before we move on to that, I just want to go to Matthew's question. And he's asked, by the way, lots of compliments about how smart you're both looking tonight as well, just in the comments, just to let you know. Matthew's asked, can you guys clarify triangulation for me? With my suppliers in the EU, I can triangulate the sale. So the goods sold in Europe, staying in Europe, can avoid paying duty twice. I hope that made sense to someone.
Yeah, I think. Sorry, okay, do you want to take it?
I was just going to say triangulation is a new term for me, but maybe there's a simpler way of understanding it.
Let's have it. Can you guys clarify triangulation for me for my suppliers in the EU? Can I triangulate the sale so the goods sold in Europe, staying in Europe, can avoid paying duty twice? So I think what Matthew's saying is if he's sourcing from European suppliers, presumably because he's a UK company, if it's staying in Europe, would he have to pay twice?
I think
point of view.
There's a number of complexities around, I think, what he's trying to maybe get some advice on. I'd say that there are cases, yes, that it is possible in some respects, in some situations, but we need to go into a bit more detail as to where the goods are coming from, and I know that you're able to defer some of the taxes at import as well. If you're going like into the Netherlands and then paying it in Germany, if you're declaring the sale in Germany, for example, then you can carry the taxes over. So it's rare that sellers do that. And I would very much recommend, because it's such an individual case and on a case-by-case basis, that you reach out to us separately and we can connect you with one of the technical advisors to go through that in more detail.
Cool. So we know now, we've been into Brexit. I forget, we're nearly in March, so we're coming up to 3 months. And obviously we know that there's still a bit of a mess at the borders. Things are taking a little while to go through, purely because I think it's fair to say that there hasn't been a lot of guidelines about what needs to, what changes and what people need to do and the documentation that they need to provide with their goods. Now, we deal with a lot of sellers who sell arbitrage goods, which is obviously a wide variety of products. And generally, they'll use the UPS partner carrier service. It's less on pallets, that type of thing. Now, I will never, I never want to say to anybody that it's going to be impossible to do that type of business moving forward, because we don't know what's going to happen in the future, obviously. But is it fair to say that people who do deal in a lot of mixed goods, where they need to provide different commodity codes and different countries of origin and all of this different documentation, declarations of conformity, safety licenses, all of this different types of thing, is it going to be harder for those type of sellers moving forward that probably deal less with smaller shipments and mixed goods, as opposed to large palleted shipments of single goods from one country of origin?
Yeah, I think that in terms of the documentation and the procedures that have been put in place because of new regulations that have been enforced, I think that the real challenge and frustration that I've heard from clients, which seems to be the general consensus, is that each different transport agent that they're working with seems to have a slightly different process. Mm-hmm. So in terms of email templates, the commercial invoice template, to what is actually required on that commercial invoice. And it's quite a minefield to try and navigate all of those different requirements with different transport agents. I would say that it's quite uncommon for a business to do all of this customs work internally because of the resources, the time, the expertise that you need in order to get everything from pen to paper. So I'd say that's the reason why you should work with a specialist in the space that understands customs requirements, that understands what you need to get your goods imported. So a lot of transport agents do offer good customer service. Avask also has a customs and trade department that can help actually import your goods into Europe or into the UK, vice versa. And we actually work directly with a number of transport agents where we have aligned processes so that we understand what the transport agents need in terms of documentation. We can advise on that documentation, whether there needs to be amendments made. We can recommend those, and we can basically help you get to a position whereby you can feel assured and confident that what you are sending in terms of documentation is going to mean that hopefully your goods can successfully be imported.
Mm-hmm. And I think,
so I'd say definitely, to try. There's a lot of expertise in the industry. I'd say now more than ever, because of the changes, it's important to try and lean on the expertise as much as possible.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think that's one thing that when Amazon started doing their series of Brexit webinars, they very quickly came out and said, look, you guys will be able to do this yourself, but this is very expertise knowledge at the end of the day. And I think a lot of people who have probably tried to attempt it themselves. I know Andy messaged me earlier and wanted me to ask that question in particular. And, haven't successfully been able to get shipments over the border because of that lack of expertise knowledge. Presumably in a few years, once we're used to doing this, people are going to get used to the processes, what's going to be needed and what isn't going to be needed. But Amazon certainly made it clear at the start that kind of expertise and assistance is, if you want to continue to sell in Europe moving forward, that's what's going to be needed to be able to do it. I think they were very clear about customs brokers and working with those type of organizations and companies is going to have to be handled moving forward. Now, one term that you made me aware of, actually, Tom, this week, which I wasn't aware of, there are some changes coming up with regards to selling in Europe. And I've done some research. I've looked into it. Come July, things are going to change a little bit. Am I right in saying things are going to get slightly easier, or have I misread it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's obviously something called the one-stop shop, which is extension of the VAT MOS scheme in the UK, which is basically to simplify the way that a seller will remit taxes. So yeah, it is definitely good news. And it's a point that we sort of brushed past earlier, actually, to maybe just to take a step back before we go into the EU changes, is that you asked, what the key ways of selling into Europe are. And, we discussed the European fulfillment network, we discussed pan-European program, but, as we've said hundreds of times already in this session alone, is that you're going to need 2 VAT numbers, you're going to need to have stock held in both countries. And just to expand quickly on the European fulfillment network, or just the pan-European, whatever selling in Europe structure that you use under FBA or whatever it is, and then we can expand off the back onto that on OSS. So as you actually bring your products into the EU, you can still trade under the distance selling threshold. So the way that I would explain it to a seller on the phone will really depend on the size of the company, the exposure that they're looking to get. Because the most important thing, as all of you I'm sure already know, is that you're wanting to be as visible as possible in each market. And yes, we know that the likes of Germany and the UK are the larger markets, but if you're selling in Italy and Spain and your products aren't stored in those locales, then one, you're going to be charged that cross-border transaction fee. You're not going to get the local fulfillment, the FBA fee, the local one, and it's also not going to be Prime eligible. So you're going to miss out on a lot of sales. So it's really, really important that you position yourselves in those markets as quickly as possible, which is why, when you look at the size of business that would typically be on the pan-European program, then anyone sort of, who knows what the right level of turnover is to expand to the pan-EU program. But we've seen sellers at 200,000 right the way up, through to anything over $1 million of, where we would expect to see a pan-European seller. And that really is based on, one, having maximum exposure, paying the lower fulfillment fees, and making sure that, that you have that prime promise. Because, I speak to sellers on a daily basis. I speak to, individuals on a daily basis. Everyone wants their products the next day. There's over 500 million Prime subscribers in the US alone. Right? I know we're not talking about the US, but it just describes demand for the next day delivery. And that's increasing. And I think if you really want to drive your business forward, maybe you're preparing for an exit, maybe you're, whatever you might be doing, you're going to be trying to grow and you're going to try to increase your profits, then having the larger sales volumes in all of the markets is going to be absolutely essential. So I'd tempt people to look at the pan-EU program. I'd tempt you to have your stock closer to your buyers for those reasons. But if you didn't want to do that, then you can store your products just in one country and you can trade under those thresholds into different countries up until July. Which brings me on to the OSS, which I'm sure Piers can add to in just a second. But what is OSS? It's a change coming into place, which is an extension of the scheme that was in the UK, which is basically where you pay your VAT to one country of your choice if you're not incorporated in an EU country already. So to take a step back, if you're a UK business, you will basically be choosing, in short, a country in the EU to actually remit your tax return through. Okay? So if you're a UK business, let's say hypothetically, my French is awful, but let's say I speak French. I'm going to think that that's probably going to be the easiest country to register for the OSS through because of the communication and so on. I'm sure it would all be centralized into languages anyway. And I'm going to be able to remit all of my sales VAT to the French tax authorities. And then what the French tax authorities are going to do is they're going to work out, whether there's the thresholds in place, whether the tax is actually due to France, the domestic VAT return to France, or whether it's going to be sent to Germany or Italy or Spain. So they're going to do the hard work for you. But what you're now thinking is probably, well, do I actually need to be VAT registered then if I'm filing all to one country? And the question is, and the answer rather is that wherever you're storing your products, you're going to need to be VAT registered. So it comes back to that whole visibility point of view, the local FBA fees and so on. Piers, I don't know if you wanted to add anything on those thresholds and things I haven't touched on.
Yeah, good points covered there, Tom. I think just, again, going back to sort of the reasons why they're introducing what's going to be called the one-stop shop. You've got to remember that the European Union and single market's been in place since early 90s, and actually the same VAT filing system has been in place since then as well. So I think it's the way it has been done has become quite outdated. Also, when it was first introduced, you really didn't have this e-commerce industry that is thriving as we've got at the moment. So I think there's a real need to look at amending and streamlining the way that VAT is filed and submitted to the various tax authorities. But as Tom mentioned, the one-stop shop is going to be for B2C services, and it will mean the removal of the distance selling thresholds.
Right.
The reason for that is because all the sales are going to be taxed in the country of arrival, unless you're a really small e-commerce business with a turnover of less than €10,000. So what it means is that if you're doing distance sales, you're not going to have to complete lots of different VAT returns, because you're going to be doing one quarterly single return, declaring all your distance sales through a marketplace of your choice. So that marketplace are going to be the ones that are doing your VAT or your OOS return. And what they'll be doing is redistributing the VAT that is payable to the EU countries where the VAT is owed. There's going to be a requirement for a business to complete their OSS return. And as Tom mentioned, what we're going to suggest to clients is that if you are familiar with the language, or it's a marketplace you've been operating in for some time, then it makes sense to register for your OOS return in that marketplace that you're most familiar with. But as Tom also mentioned, for pan-EU clients who are storing goods in multiple marketplaces, then ultimately you've still got your physical presence in that marketplace, and you will still need to be VAT registered in the countries where you're going to be storing. So moving forward from the 1st of July 2021, what you're going to need to do is have two separate returns. One is you're going to be your one-stop shop return, which is going to replace distance selling thresholds. However, if you're storing in multiple marketplaces, and you're still going to need to complete local returns for the marketplaces you're storing in, which is going to be any domestic sales that you've made from, say, a French marketplace or a French fulfillment center, to a French consumer. So there'll be two separate returns, but the one-stop shop is really going to simplify the whole distance selling thresholds thing.
So the one-stop shop is essentially going to be used for the European fulfillment network, and the localized VAT returns or returns are going to be more for your pan-European registered sellers, where the stock is being sent to multiple different fulfillment centers around Europe. Is that right?
Yeah, correct.
So if you want to take advantage of the lower fulfillment cost rates, then you have to go down the pan-European registration route.
Yeah, exactly. I think it goes without saying, there becomes a point of having the additional visibility as to where that outweighs in terms of price against the, one, the hassle, and two, the compliance cost versus the increase in sales. I think especially if you're growing your brand, which may not be quite so relevant for the group here, but if you're trying to really push a brand, then it's really, really important to establish in each country and to make sure that you can build that presence as much as possible. With all that said, I know that there's a lot of information that we fed through, and that's it. I know we talked about it before. I wanted to really address the elephant in the room here as well, which is, Avask, a tax provider. We provide, some, hopefully everyone thinks, some great advice of expanding into new markets. We really know our stuff, and we know the complexities that you go through as an Amazon seller, just in the nature of what we do. We currently assist over 10,000 e-commerce sellers, or really Amazon sellers, with their tax compliance in the UK and EU alone. So we deal with this day in, day out. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because there is a number of different providers, including Amazon VAT services. And we're actually part of Amazon VAT services as well. So we are one of the parties that run that as an external provider. But we have our core service offering and Amazon VAT services. So Amazon VAT services is a great solution. It's free. And that's obviously the promotion that they're running at the moment. It's a purely software-based solution, which if you really know your stuff and you're set up and you're very confident, then, all for it. I think it's a really great solution. But I hope after what myself and Piers have gone through in detail with Brexit, with customs, with July OSS changes, I would say this year is the most important year in the history that probably I and Piers have been alive, to have everything correct, to have a provider that's going to be able to give you that assistance throughout the process and really hold your hand when your shipments are going through, when your VAT return's due, when the questions come up, when your account's suspended in Germany because you haven't got the right tax document.
We've all been there. We've all been there.
So I just wanted to address that, but there are the two solutions, but that's sort of where that consultancy comes in, and that's where the added value is, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I'll make sure I do, guys, is obviously I'll put the contact details, I'll put the website on here, and we'll post it in the group as well. So for anyone that does want to find out some further information, you guys know we're never about selling on never mind the buy box or anything like that. But when it comes to this opportunity of selling in Europe, I hate to say it, it's one of those things that unless you do have that extensive import experience, that this is something that you have to get assistance on. Yes, the opportunity is real. There's massive potential for profit in Europe at the moment. We all know that. We're all getting serious FOMO. Most of our sellers, most of our community have lost 25, 30, 40% of their business overnight. So this is always about letting you guys know what the options are. This might not be for everyone. It might be, for some people, it might be a step too far, that they don't want to take their business. The reason they got into selling on Amazon FBA in the first place is because it's a side hustle or something like that. So it's all about just giving you guys the opportunity and the options, because most of you, or most of us, haven't really known what those options are going to be moving forward. Do you think the more we get into Brexit, this is the process, nothing's going to change presumably on the customs border, that stays where it is, that information. But as we are, because like none of us in our lifetimes, I'm not old enough, I don't think, that have ever not known it any differently. As we get used to more of these things, presumably as more services pop up, people that are willing to, more transportation services and that type of thing, do you think it will get easier moving forward, or is it just a case of this is it now and we got to suck it and see?
I'd say that there's already been a lot of positive movement and a lot of onboarding of information that's taken place even since the 1st of January. I've seen things have got noticeably less hectic since the date of Brexit actually happening. And although that there is a huge learning curve for everyone, and I think we really empathise with clients at the moment because, as you mentioned, this has never been a concept for them, so it's brand new for everyone. But I think I think the businesses that are going to be able to profit most out of the situation are the ones that are able to slightly adapt the business, pivot, and then persist with Europe as a marketplace. Because the truth is that the challenges are going to put a lot of people off Europe as a marketplace. If your business can change the model slightly, implement the necessary changes, and then continue to get your goods into Europe, then you're going to be dealing with a lot less saturated market than you were doing before, which is going to really do a lot of benefit in terms of the turnover that you can make.
Well, I mean, I definitely recommend everyone that's watching tonight, everyone that's going to watch this video, to get in contact with you guys, because I definitely see the continuation of EFM moving forward, especially with the one-stop shop, registering in Germany, sending the stock into Germany, and even just utilizing the European fulfillment network, because still the exchange rate coming back still really favorable from changing back to euro and pound. So that's an extra added benefit that our European counterparts don't have as well, that people need to take into account. So I definitely recommend getting in touch with these guys, and as a minimum, if selling in Europe is something that you want to do, going down that route and having a look at that, because there is a possibility. It just means that you're going to have to work with an expert to be able to get you across the line to be able to take advantage of that opportunity. Now, I know that you guys are on another call at 8 o'clock. So I just want to quickly, if it's okay with you, David's just asked a quick question at the end. He said, if I start selling via France after July, I need a VAT reg in France doing quarterly returns for French sales. And do I need an additional VAT return using OSS for the rest of the EU sales? Obviously, my UK VAT return as well. So is that 3 returns in total?
Yeah. So in terms of the setup, so if he's looking to hold stock in France, which it sounds like he is, then yes, the French VAT returns we file on a monthly basis, not quarterly. Firstly, and obviously that will go down. French consumers buying his products from that French FBA warehouse will be a domestic return, so that would be the one. And then, with regards to sort of the OSS, if he's distance selling into, or what we call distance selling into other countries continues, then there'll be an OSS return required as well, which he'll then file his tax through.
Okay, and perfect. And one final question, this is probably going to be for Piers, if that's all right. Andy's question actually was to do with the problem he's hitting is with UPS not active and not having an importer of record in Europe, which has been a new request. He has a European VAT number and Iori number, and has even a loaded database of commodity codes. So could you just quickly explain what the importer of record is?
Yeah, so previously UK businesses, being part of the single market and the customs union, they could have just imported, or they wouldn't have even need to import goods into the European Union. It could have just simply been a cross-border movement between the UK and a European country. Unfortunately, because the UK has left the European Union, if you are a UK business or any third country business for that matter, when you're importing your goods into the EU, you now need to have either a European establishment of yourself, so a European entity set up, which could be a separate legal entity or a subsidiary of your UK business with a registered address in the EU. Or alternatively, you're going to need to appoint an indirect representative to act as that legal representative, and they also need to be a European-based business. UPS in particular, at the start of the year, were offering an indirect representation service as part of their transportation. However, unfortunately, they ran into sort of internal problems that basically meant that they suspended services from the UK into the EU. Right. I know that they are in the process of attempting to resolve the issues that they're having. However, based on my understanding of how most of those size couriers work, I wouldn't be surprised if UPS did resume the service of transportation, but without the indirect representation, because indirect representation places joint liability for any customs related transactions on the business, such as UPS. So I'd say that in their case in particular, I know they're working on it, and I'm sure they will come to a solution at some point. But whether they'll be able to offer a door-to-door service, I'm not too sure. It may be that you have to work with an alternative indirect representative who has a European-based establishment. If that is something that you're interested in learning more about how Avask can help, then do get in touch with myself, as we do have that service available.
Just to add to that very quickly, Piers, some really good points there, is that I think it's fair to say that most Amazon transactions for FBA that go cross-border do require the seller, as in the Amazon seller, to be the importer of record, which basically means that you're going to be responsible for taking the goods from A to B, which is why a lot of sellers are finding themselves needing to VAT register in the country of arrival, because they're the importer of record. So they're physically then holding stock. It's a movement of stock. You're still responsible for that stock as soon as it comes into the EU, which is why, really, in theory, everyone should register if you're selling B2C straight in all of the countries, which is why it's a much better option to register and have stock held in both the UK and the EU, and have 2 hubs catering for
right. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Guys, I know you've got to go at 8 o'clock, so thank you so much for joining me. What I'm going to do is I'll pop your details in the Secret Wealth Project Facebook group, and I'll also make sure I pop it on the feed on here as well. Tom's actually a member of the group, so I'll tag you in it as well. So, if anyone's got any questions or anything like that, and if they want to get in contact with you, do you offer a telephone consultation or anything like that?
Yeah, exactly. I was just about to say, all of our consultations free. So if you're 3 months, 9 months, 2 years off expanding, give us a call. If you've got some questions, let us know. Happy to talk that through, and we can go through the solutions and options. So yeah, reach out to us on the emails provided, and we'll be happy to set up a call.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your time tonight. Thank you for your insights. It's been absolutely fascinating. I know I've certainly I know you guys have certainly answered some questions that I know have been some real kind of, head thinkers in this group in particular. So thank you very much for your time this evening. Take care. Obviously, I'll put all the contact details in the group. And just thanks. It's been absolutely amazing.
Thank you so much for having us.
All right. Take care, everyone. Bye.
Later. Bye.